We are back. I'm Michael Cohen, 1320 WILS. A federal judge ruling that Apple colluded with U.S. publishers to drive up the prices of ebooks. It's a ruling that some experts disagree with, but one that's likely to have a major implication on how content deals will be negotiated in the future. Antitrust expert Keith Hylton is a professor at Boston University's School of Law. Keith, thank you for joining us on WILS.
Thank you, Michael.
So Apple responded to the ruling saying that it did not conspire to fix ebook pricing and said that really the point of their iBook store was to, quote, break Amazon's monopolistic grip on the publishing industry. Does this ruling make sense to you?
Well, it makes sense if you read it in the same way that the judge read the facts and read what happened in the case. I mean, the judge's opinion is a story about what happened. It reconstructs the whole sequence of events, and it tells the reader how to interpret the sequence of events. And under the judge's interpretation, the result follows pretty easily.
Okay, give me the outline of it. What is it the judge felt that Apple did to actually price fix these ebooks?
The judge's story is that Apple acted. Well, I should say the judge accepted the story that the Department of Justice presented, which is that Apple acted as a cartel ringmaster. That Apple went to the publishers, got them all to agree to switch to the agency model and to switch to a model which imposed higher prices on consumers.
Okay, now the agency model, what is that exactly?
Oh, that's a model in which Apple acts as an agent of the book publisher. In other words, Apple does not purchase the book from the publisher and then resell it to the consumer. Apple just says, okay, I'm going to act like your employee in a sense, or I'm going to act like some sort of agent where you sell the book directly to the consumer, and I'm going to take a cut out of that. I'm going to take 30% out of that sales transaction.
Okay, and this is something Amazon, who was ruling the industry at that point, was not doing?
No, that's right. Amazon had a traditional wholesaler or a retailer model where Amazon purchased the book from the publisher and then turned around and sold it to the consumer.
I see. So into the agency model, was that more profitable to Apple then?
Yes, it was. Okay,
so that model was something the publishers agreed to. Did they also want to do this model?
They sure did, or at least they appeared to want to do this model from everything that's come out so far.
What was the advantage to the publishers?
Oh, they made more money from the agency model, and they were afraid that the pricing structure that Amazon had adopted would impose some long-term harm on the publishing business. Amazon was selling ebooks at $9.99, and the publishers were afraid that consumers would get used to $9.99 and would no longer be willing to pay, say, $30 or $15 or any other amount, any other higher amount for a new book that's released.
Wait, but was Amazon dictating that price?
Yes, in a sense, Amazon was saying to the publishers, well, in a sense, no, I mean, this is what's happened. Amazon purchased the book from the publishers and then turned around and sold it at $9.99. So, and in many cases, Amazon took a loss on selling the book. And you might ask, well, why would Amazon take a loss in selling a book? Because Amazon was interested, at least early in its business, in getting as many readers as possible to use the Kindle device. So Amazon was happy to use books as a loss leader to maximize its installed base of consumers using the Kindle reading device.
Well, I'm talking to Keith Hylton, professor at the Boston University School of Law and antitrust expert. Now, at the time that Apple got involved with their iBook store, Amazon had 80-90% of the ebook industry under control.
That's right.
How did they not face any kind of antitrust cases?
Well, that's an interesting question, and I think the reason is that Amazon was selling at a very low price, and most of the time when there's an antitrust complaint, it's a complaint that you're selling at a high price, you've got a high market share, and you're selling at a high price, and you're doing something that makes it impossible for people to compete against you. Now, in this case, Apple's selling at an extremely low price, and that's kind of hard to bring an antitrust claim based on that, though not impossible.
You mean Amazon was selling it at a low price? They didn't attract.
Amazon was selling it at extremely low price.
So Apple comes in 2010 with their iBook store and this agency model. What happens to the prices of the ebooks at that point?
They start to rise. And so there's a gradual, or maybe not so gradual, shift upward in the overall price of ebooks. Right now, I think they've come down a bit, and it's hard to say how much pricing pressure Amazon is placing on ebooks right now, but at least for some time, the average price of ebooks went up after Apple introduced its iBooks store. Okay,
but Amazon was continuing to sell their own books. Did they have to increase their prices also somehow?
I think so. I mean, it's a complicated story, and the facts are all out there in the opinion. But I think Amazon was forced by some of the publishers to back off from its relationship and to agree to higher prices with the publishers because the publishers had a threat to sell all of their books out of Apple instead of Amazon.
Do you agree? Do you agree with the ruling? Do you think Apple did in fact do something wrong here?
Well, the short answer is no. I don't think they did anything wrong. That's my opinion. The complicated part of it is how the law works in this area and whether Apple has any shot of overturning the judge's decision. I
mean, does Apple have a shot with these antitrust cases?
I think it's unlikely because this case comes down to what happened and how do you read the facts. And the judge has gone through the facts very carefully and has explained her view of what happened. And she says, "Look, I think this is a conspiracy." And it's when that gets appealed. And Apple plans to appeal at this stage. When that decision gets appealed, the appellate court can overturn or modify that decision only if there's a mistake in the application of the law.
It sounds like Apple did, in fact, sit down with the publishers, and they came up with this agency model agreement. That in itself is not a problem?
That in itself is not a problem. The problem is if what Apple does is equivalent to arranging a horizontal conspiracy. In other words, if what Apple has done is, in effect, allow the publishers to fix prices among themselves, then that's against the law. That's a violation of the antitrust laws. And that's the core of what the court said happened in its opinion today.
Now, the publishers, they've entered into settlements with the Justice Department, right?
That's right.
Why did they do that?
They didn't want to litigate because it's very expensive. They were afraid that they would lose, and they don't have the kind of money that Apple has.
Mm-hmm. It looks like in hindsight they were right to do so then?
Yes, it depends. It depends on how you look at it because, I answered you a few minutes ago. You asked, did Apple do anything wrong? And I thought about wrong as in the overall utilitarian sense, is society better off as a result of what Apple did? And that's what I meant when I said I don't think Apple did anything wrong because they were coming out with a new product. It solved a problem that the publishers, if we take them at their word, thought was damaging their industry, which would be bad for consumers in the long run, too. So if we take the publishers at their word, then Apple was offering an alternative that may have been better in terms of the long-term promotion of the book writing and selling business.
I see. You're saying the damage to the publishing industry was that Amazon was selling ebooks at such a low price, and they were really the only game in town.
Yeah, and when prices get pushed too low, that does have some impacts on how much effort publishers will put into promoting books, how much retailers will put into promoting books, how much publishers can put into promoting authors and in developing authors.
What about iTunes? Has that service faced any antitrust issues?
That's an interesting question, because I guess iTunes works the same way. I think Apple goes to music publishers and says, hey, we're going to put your stuff through iTunes, but here's the price you're going to have to let us charge, which is sort of the same as what it did with the book publishers. So I don't know if this case has implications for iTunes, but it is interesting that I think iTunes works pretty much the same way, where Apple sets the price and takes a 30% agency cut out of the sales.
Are you getting a sense that the government is somehow picking on Apple?
No, I think what happens is that big cases get a lot of attention. They establish the reputations of government attorneys. They establish a threat to other businesses who are thinking about doing the same things. So I don't think there's any real picking on Apple necessarily. I mean, I think Apple just happened to be in the unlucky position of being a well-known company.
Well, and now we're going to have these other cases regarding damages, right, to consumers that may have paid too much for ebooks. It sounds like a money train for attorneys, no?
That's true. That's for sure. I would imagine some lawyers are filing their claims for damages. They're probably putting together plaintiff classes right now as we speak.
Is that a bit ridiculous?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. Again, if you look at it, if you say, well, maybe what Apple was doing was good in the long term, then it's ridiculous. On the other hand, if you say that, if you look at it the way, that this is just a conspiracy, and that's all, this is just a horizontal conspiracy, then you'd say, well, this is not so bad. This is a good result. And then Apple is being punished for arranging a horizontal conspiracy, and that's good. We want to see that happen. Well, so it kind of depends on.
And the price increase we're talking about went from $10 an ebook to something like $13 to $15 a book, right?
Right. So you have the price differential, $3, I guess, and multiplied by the number of ebook sales, and that will be the damages that will be assessed.
Keith Hylton, professor at Boston University School of Law and antitrust expert. Keith, thank you so much for your insight here on 1320 WILS.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. I'm Michael Cohen, 1320 WILS.